The bubbly drink was still bubbling in her glass when a hand with tattoos, full of sureness, out of nowhere, showed up in the corner of her eye. "Dance with me." Nalati Kimalo looked up from where she'd been watching her daughter move gently in her new husband's arms, and her breath stopped for a second. Not in a big way, not like the book she'd read when she was a kid. She was a little skip in her chest that she told herself meant nothing. The guy standing there was hard to miss. White hair fixed in a messy way on purpose, hanging just right over a face that should be on magazine fronts. The dragon tattoo curling up his neck should have seemed mean, but instead it made him seem risky in a way that made her heart beat faster. Wide shoulders filled his fancy black suit like it was made right on him. He was looking at her with dark eyes that had something she couldn't really name. She started. "It's a wedding," he said, and the side of his mouth went up. "You're supposed to dance at weddings." His voice had the easy sureness of someone who always gets what he wants. But there was something else under it. An accent that wasn't all Korean, wasn't all American, something mixed. Nalati looked at Sybil, who was in the middle of a spin with her groom, glowing in white lace and happiness. Her daughter saw her looking and gave her a tiny nod, a smile on her lips. "I don't even know you," Nal had said, which was a dumb thing to say at a wedding where half the people were strangers to her. "Anyway, Michael Kim," he said, holding out his hand for real now. "The groom's uncle and your Sybil's mother, which makes us family now. So, technically, you do know me." She couldn't stop the smile that pulled at her lips. "That's a stretch. Then, let's fix it." His hand was still out, waiting one dance. She should have said no. Should have made some nice excuse about checking the food or fixing her dress or anything else. But there was something in how he stood there, waiting but sure, that made her put down her bubbly drink and put her hand in his. His palm was warm, rough, in a way that surprised her. These weren't the smooth hands of a guy who only signs papers and makes calls. He took her to the dance floor, just as the band changed to something slow, something that made the lights seem softer and the air heavier. "You've got calluses," she said before she could stop. His eyebrow went up. "You noticed I noticed things?" "Good," he said, and pulled her closer. Not too close in a bad way, just close enough that she could smell his scent. Something like wood and fancy, but not too strong. "So do I." They moved together, and Nally was really aware of every spot they touched. His hand on her lower back, strong and steady, her hand on his shoulder, feeling the muscle move under the cloth. The way their bodies found a beat without thinking. "You're not from Seoul," she said, because the silence was becoming too loud. "Cal," he replied. "I've been living in the States for almost 20 years. I only came back for the wedding." "That's a long flight for a wedding. Family is family." His eyes held hers. "Besides, I'm starting to think it was worth it." Heat went up her neck. She wasn't supposed to feel like this. She was 41 years old, a widow, a mother, a woman who'd made a life from the broken pieces of sadness. She wasn't supposed to feel her stomach flip, because a good-looking stranger looked at her like she was the only one in the room. "You're staring," she said softly. "You're beautiful," he replied without waiting. No charm, no game, just fact. Our words failed her. She looked away, watching the other couples moving around them. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because you don't know me." "Then tell me." His hand pressed a bit harder on her back, and she felt the push go through her whole body. "Tell me who you are." He met his eyes again, and something in her chest opened a little. "Nalati, I moved here from South Africa 2 years ago to be closer to my daughter." "That's what you did, not who you are." Just swallowed. "I don't know how to answer that question anymore." His expression got softer, and for a second the sureness turned to something more real. "Fair enough. I don't think I know how to answer it either." They turned slowly, their feet moving together like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Nalati felt the warmth of his body going into hers, felt the steady beat of his breathing. It had been so long since she'd been held like this. 15 years since strong arms had led her across a dance floor. 15 years since she'd let herself want something she couldn't name. "You're thinking too hard," Michael murmured, and she realized she'd tensed. "I think exactly the right amount." He laughed, and the sound shook through his chest into hers. Somehow, I believe that the song was winding down, the final notes hanging in the air like a question waiting to be answered. Michael's thumb traced a small circle against her back, unconscious, absent-minded, and Nally felt that touch like a brand. "Thank you for the dance," he said as they slowed to a stop, but he didn't immediately let go. "Thank you for asking," she replied, and meant it more than she wanted to. For a moment, they just stood there on the dance floor while other couples drifted away. The fairy lights strung above them cast golden shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. "I should," she started. "Yeah," he agreed, but still didn't move. Finally, reluctantly, he released her. His hand slid away from her back slowly, like he was memorizing the feeling. She stepped backward, putting necessary space between them, but her skin still hummed where he touched her. "Enjoy the rest of the wedding," she said, hating how breathless she sounded. "You, too." He slipped his hands into his pockets, and she noticed the slight clench of his jaw, like he was holding himself back from something. Nalati turned and walked back to her table, acutely aware that he was watching her go. She could feel his gaze on her back like a physical weight. When she finally dared to glance over her shoulder, he was still standing there, hands in his pockets, dragon tattoos stark against his skin under the lights. Their eyes met across the crowded reception hall, and something passed between them. Recognition maybe, or warning. Sybil appeared at her elbow, practically vibrating with excitement. "Mom!" "Oh my God, you danced with Uncle Michael." "It was just a dance, baby. It was just a dance." Sybil's eyes were wide. "Mom, he's gorgeous and rich. And did you see the way he was looking at you, Sybil? I'm just saying," her daughter continued, squeezing her arm. "He looked happy. He actually happy. I haven't seen that in a long time." Nal's throat tightened. She pulled her daughter into a hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume, the same one she'd worn since she was 16. "Today is about you and your happiness, not mine. Can't it be about both?" Sal pulled back, her hands framing her mother's face. "Mama, you're allowed to live again. You know that, right?" Before Naladi could respond, the groom appeared to whisk his bride away for photographs, and now was left, alone with her thoughts and the ghost of warm hands on her back. She picked up her champagne, now flat and lukewarm, and tried to focus on anything except the way her heart was still racing. Tried to ignore how she could still feel the imprint of his fingers against her spine. Tried not to notice when Michael Kim slipped out of the reception hall an hour later, his white hair catching the light one last time before he disappeared. It was just a dance, she told herself firmly. Just a dance, nothing more. But as the night wound down and she rode back to her apartment through Seoul's glittering streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something had cracked open inside her that she'd kept carefully sealed for 15 years. And the most terrifying part, she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to close it again. 3 days later, Nal's lungs were burning in the best way. Her feet pounded against the pavement of Honghong Park, each stride carrying her further along the river as dawn painted the sky in shades of coral and gold. This was her time, the sacred hour before the city fully woke, before the chaos and noise and demands of the day crashed in. It was just her breath, and the rhythmic slap of her running shoes against concrete. She'd started running after her husband died. At first, it was just a way to exhaust herself enough to sleep, but somewhere along the way, it had become meditation, therapy, the one place where her thoughts could unspool without judgment. This morning, though, her thoughts kept circling back to a pair of dark eyes and a tattooed neck. Stop it, she told herself, pushing harder. It was nothing. He's probably back in California by now. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like disappointment. She finished her loop and slowed to a walk, pulling out her earbuds as sweat trickled down her spine. Her reflection in a shop window showed flushed cheeks and hair escaping from her ponytail, but her eyes were bright, alive. She'd take it. The coffee shop on the corner, Brew in Bloom, was just opening, the owner flipping the sign and waving at her through the glass. Nality had become a regular over the past 2 years, and the owner always had her iced Americano ready within minutes of her arrival. The bell chimed as she pushed through the door, grateful for the blast of air conditioning against her heated skin. The shop was empty except for the owner, which was exactly how Nality liked it. She could cool down, caffeinate, and ease into the day without Nality. She froze. Michael Kim sat in the corner booth, a laptop open in front of him and a coffee cup halfway to his lips. He looked just as surprised as she felt, his eyes widening slightly before that familiar confidence slid back into place. Michael, his name felt strange on her tongue. Intimate. I thought you'd be back in the States by now. So did I. He closed the laptop and stood, and she was reminded all over again how tall he was, how his presence seemed to fill spaces without trying. But business got complicated. Extended stay. Business. She nodded, not sure why her heart was hammering harder now than it had been during her run. Right, you run. He gestured to her obvious workout attire, form-fitting leggings, and a fitted tank that suddenly felt too revealing under his gaze. Every morning, she ordered her usual from the counter, acutely aware that he was watching her every move. Helps me think. What do you think about? The question was casual, but something in his tone made it feel heavier. She collected her coffee and turned to find him still standing there waiting. Everything, she said honestly. Nothing depends on the day. Mind if I join you? He gestured to his booth. Unless you prefer to drink alone. She should say yes. Should make an excuse and take her coffee to go. Should maintain the polite distance that was appropriate between two people who'd shared one dance at a wedding and nothing more. Sure, she heard herself say instead. She slid into the booth across from him and immediately regretted it. The space felt too small, too intimate. She could smell that same cologne from the wedding mixed, now with coffee and something uniquely him. So Michael said, leaning back with studied casualness, you run every morning unless it's pouring rain. I prefer the gym boxing mostly. That explained the calluses, but I've been trying to adjust to Seoul schedule again. Haven't quite managed it yet. Jet lag, something like that. His eyes held hers, and there was that electricity again. That snap of awareness that made her skin prickle. Or maybe, I just haven't found a good enough reason to sleep. That sounds exhausting. It is. He took a slow sip of his coffee. Tell me about South Africa. The subject changed through her. What about it? Everything. What it was like growing up there. Why you left. What you miss. Nality blinked. Men didn't usually ask her about her life. Not really. They asked about her daughter, about her husband, about the acceptable topics that kept things surface level and safe. That's a long answer, she warned. I've got time. He settled deeper into his seat, giving her his full attention in a way that made her feel both exposed and seen. I was supposed to be on a conference call 20 minutes ago, but it can wait. Something in her chest loosened. Cape Town was beautiful, all mountains and ocean and sunshine. I grew up in a small township outside the city, and it was, she paused, searching for the right word, alive, loud and colorful, and full of music and people who loved hard and fought harder. You miss it every day. The admission surprised her. She didn't usually talk about this, but Sybil is here, and after my husband passed, I couldn't stand being in that house alone. Every corner reminded me of him, every street, every cafe, every sunset. So when she got engaged and decided to move to Seoul, I followed. That must have been difficult, leaving everything behind. I didn't leave everything. I brought what mattered. She looked down at her coffee, watching condensation slide down the plastic cup. Memory is portable. Grief is too, unfortunately. How long were you married? 22 years. The number still felt surreal. He was my high school sweetheart, my first love, my only love really. Michael was quiet for a moment, and when she looked up his expression had shifted into something softer. understanding. My marriage lasted 12 years. Divorced 3 years ago. I'm sorry, don't be. She cheated multiple times. Apparently, I was the last to know. He said it matter-of-factly, but she caught the edge of old pain underneath. Turns out, building a business empire doesn't leave much room for noticing when your wife is unhappy. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? He turned his coffee cup in slow circles. I was never home, always chasing the next deal, the next acquisition. I thought providing was the same as being present. I was wrong. Nality found herself leaning forward without meaning to. Being betrayed wasn't something you deserved. Michael, no matter how busy you were, his eyes snapped to hers, and for a moment, the intensity in them stole her breath. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know enough, and somehow she did. I know you flew across the world for your nephew's wedding. I know you treat strangers with kindness. I know you ask real questions, and actually listen to the answers. That says more about who you are than any marriage certificate ever could. The silence that followed was thick and charged. Michael's jaw worked like he was chewing on words he wasn't sure he should say. Finally, he spoke, his voice rougher than before. You're dangerous. You know that. She couldn't help the small laugh that escaped. How am I dangerous? You see too much. You're too honest. And you make me want. He stopped himself, shaking his head. Never mind. Want what? To stay, he said simply. I should be in California right now, but I keep finding excuses to extend my trip, and I think he leaned forward, his forearms on the table, close enough now that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I think you might be the real reason why. Nalad's pulse was thundering in her ears. This was too much, too fast. They were basically strangers. One dance and one coffee didn't mean anything. Couldn't, Michael, I know. He held up a hand. It's crazy. We don't know each other. This is insane. But I can't stop thinking about that dance, about the way you felt in my arms, about the look in your eyes when you said you didn't know how to answer who you are anymore. He paused. I want to know. I want to know everything. I should go. She started to slide out of the booth, panic rising in her chest. This was too real, too raw. She wasn't ready for this. Might never be ready for this. Nality, wait. He didn't reach for her, didn't try to stop her physically, just said her name like a prayer. I'm not trying to scare you. Can I see you again? Maybe run with you tomorrow morning. She should say no, should protect her heart, maintain her walls, keep herself safe in the carefully constructed life she'd built from grief and duty. 6 a.m. she heard herself say Hanang Park, the same spot you probably saw me running today. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming it from handsome to absolutely devastating. I'll be there. She nodded and fled, her heart pounding harder than it had during her entire run. She made it halfway down the block before she had to stop, pressing her hand against a wall to steady herself. What are you doing? She asked herself. What the hell are you doing? But even as she asked, she knew the answer. She was falling slowly, terrifyingly, inexorably, falling for a man with white hair and a dragon tattoo, who looked at her like she was a mystery he wanted to solve. That night, curled up on her couch with a glass of wine, Nally called her daughter. Mama Sybil's voice was bright with happiness. How are you? I saw him again. Saw who? Oh my God, Uncle Michael. It was an accident. I went to get coffee after my run and he was there. And Sybil's voice had gone sly and knowing, and we talked for 2 hours. Sybil, 2 hours. I was supposed to grab coffee and leave, but she pressed her hand to her chest. He asked about my life and he told me about his divorce, and it was so easy to talk to him. Too easy, Mom. That's amazing. No, it's terrifying. Now took a long sip of wine. Baby, you don't understand. He's God. He's so hot. Like dangerously hot. That tattoo, and the white hair, and the way he looks at me like he wants to devour me. I'm 41 years old, and I'm acting like a teenager. Sybil's laugh rang through the phone, warm and delighted. You sound happy. Actually happy. I sound crazy. Same thing sometimes. There was a pause. What are you scared of, Mama? Nalady closed her eyes, forgetting, moving on, betraying your father's memory. Oh, Mama Sybil's voice went soft. Dad wouldn't want you to be alone forever. He loved you too much for that. He'd want you to live, to be happy, to find someone who treats you like you deserve. It's only been 15 years, only, Mama. 15 years is a lifetime. You've grieved, you've honored him, but you're still here, still living, still allowed to want things. She paused. Does this Michael guy seem genuine? I think so. Nality opened her eyes, staring at the ceiling. He's divorced. His wife cheated on him. He asked me to run with him tomorrow morning. Then shoot your shot, Mama. What's the worst that could happen? I could get hurt. You're already hurting. You've been hurting for 15 years. Maybe it's time to hurt differently. Maybe it's time to risk feeling good instead of just feeling safe. After they hung up, Nality sat in the dark for a long time, her daughter's words echoing in her mind. When she finally went to bed, she dreamed of warm hands and dragon tattoos, and the terrifying, exhilarating possibility of falling in love again. And when her alarm went off at 5:30 the next morning, she didn't hesitate. She got up, put on her running clothes, and headed for the park. He was already there, waiting. If you're feeling this story the way I felt writing it, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Seriously, tap it, because we've got so much more coming your way. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next between Nality and Michael. Turn on those notifications to be the first to know when I drop these mind-blowing love stories that'll have you feeling all the feels. And drop a comment below and tell me, what country are you watching from, and what time is it where you are right now? I love seeing our global family come together, whether it's 3 a.m. and you can't sleep, or high noon in your lunch break. I want to know. Oh, and one more thing. Teen, she should take the risk, or teen, she should protect her heart. Let me know in the comments. Alright, let's get back to it, because Michael and Nal's morning runs are about to become something neither of them expected. The morning runs became routine. Every day at 6 a.m., Nally and Michael met at the same spot by the Han River. At first they ran in comfortable silence, their breathing sinking as they found their rhythm. Then the silence gave way to conversation, halting at first, then flowing more easily as they learned each other's cadences. 2 weeks in, and now couldn't remember what her mornings had looked like before him. You're slowing down, Michael said, glancing over his shoulder with a knowing smirk. They were tackling the incline near Bampo Bridge, and Natal's legs were screaming. I'm pacing myself. She shot back but picked up her speed anyway. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. He laughed and matched her stride, and they crested the hill together. When they stopped to catch their breath, the city sprawled before them, Seoul waking up in shades of pink and orange. Beautiful, Michael murmured. But when Nality turned, he wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at her. It flooded her cheeks. Stop that. Stop what? Looking at me like that. Like what? His eyes were dancing with mischief now, and she realized he was enjoying making her flustered. Like, she gestured vaguely, like you're memorizing me. Maybe I am. He said it so simply, so honestly that her breath caught. Is that allowed? Before she could answer, he was jogging again, leaving her to follow. She shook her head and chased after him, her heart doing complicated things in her chest that had nothing to do with the exercise. After their runs, they started getting breakfast, just small places, hole-in-the-wall cafes, and street vendors selling kimbap and tekbaki. Michael insisted on paying every time, which made Nad simultaneously irritated and charmed. I can pay for my own food, she'd said the third time he waved away her card. I know you can, he'd replied, sliding his black card across the counter. But I want to let me. It was during these breakfasts that they really talked. Micah told her about his business, tech investments, real estate ventures, startup acquisitions, things that sounded impressive and important, but he spoke about them with a kind of detached professionalism that suggested they didn't truly excite him anymore. Why do you do it then? Nality asked one morning, watching him push rice around his plate. If it doesn't make you happy. He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know anymore. It started as a way to prove myself, to show my family I could make it on my own terms. But after the divorce, after everything fell apart, It just became, he shrugged, a distraction, a way to not think about how empty my life had become. And now he looked at her, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. Now I'm starting to think there might be other things worth paying attention to. She knew he meant her, knew it in the way his gaze lingered, in the careful way he spoke around the growing thing between them. And God help her, she was starting to feel the same way. Nalati told him about her life, too, about teaching English literature at a university in Cape Town before she'd moved, about the poetry she used to write but hadn't touched in years, about her husband, slowly, carefully, because talking about him still felt like pressing on a bruise. He was a good man, she said one morning, stirring sugar into her coffee, even though she didn't take sugar. He just needed something to do with her hands. Kind, patient. He loved with his whole heart. When he died cancer, it was quick but brutal. I thought I'd die too. Like part of my soul just went with him. Michael's hand covered hers, stilling her restless, stirring. But you didn't know. She looked down at his hand, large, warm, grounding. I survived for Sibjil, and then surviving just became living, and living became this. Whatever this is good, Michael said quietly. Whatever it is, it's good. She didn't pull her hand away. Michael started noticing things, small things she didn't realize she'd revealed. One morning, he showed up with a small paper bag. Inside was a pastry from the bakery, 3 blocks from her apartment. The one she'd mentioned in passing had the best chocolate croissants in Seoul. You remembered, she said, stunned. I remember everything you tell me, he replied like it was the most natural thing in the world. Another day, he brought her a book, a collection of Korean poetry translated into English. He said you missed reading poetry. Thought you might like this. She did like it. She loved it. And she was terrified by how much these small gestures affected her. The tension between them grew with each passing day. It was there in the way their hands would brush when they walked side by side, in the way Michael's eyes would track her movements when he thought she wasn't looking, in the loaded silences that felt heavy with unspoken words. They almost kissed one morning after a particularly hard run. They'd stopped by a bench to cool down, and Nally had tilted her head back to let the sun warm her face. When she'd opened her eyes, Michael was staring at her with such raw hunger that her breath had stopped. Natality, he'd said, his voice rough. Yeah, I really want to kiss you right now. Her heart had stuttered. Michael, I know. He'd stood abruptly, putting distance between them. I know. Too fast. I'm sorry. But he hadn't looked sorry. He'd looked tortured, like holding himself back was physically painful. Sybil invited them both to dinner at her home 2.5 weeks after the coffee shop. Her husband, Jean Ho, was a quiet, thoughtful man who clearly adored Sybil, and watching them together made Nalad's chest ache with both joy and longing. Michael fit seamlessly into the evening, charming Jean Ho with questions about his work as an architect, and making Sybil laugh with stories from the wedding. But across the table, Naladi felt his gaze on her, constantly felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. After dinner, while Sibjil and Jean Ho were in the kitchen, arguing playfully about whose turn it was to load the dishwasher, Michael and Naladi found themselves alone on the small balcony. The Seoul skyline glittered before them, but Naladi was intensely aware of Michael standing close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Your daughter is wonderful, he said softly. She got that from you. She got it from her father, too. I'm sure she did. Michael turned to face her fully, and in the dim light from the apartment, his eyes looked almost black. But she got her strength from you, her kindness, the way she loves with her whole heart. That's all you don't know that. Yes, I do. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek, and Nal's eyes fluttered closed. I see you, Naladi. I see how much you've survived, how much you've sacrificed. You know, I don't, she whispered, but she didn't move away from his touch. Don't what? Don't I say? Something we can't take back. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and she felt that touch in every nerve ending. What if I want to say it anyway? Her eyes opened, meeting his. The air between them was crackling, charged with 2 weeks of building, tension and swallowed words. Michael's hand cupped her face fully now, and she found herself leaning into it without meaning to. "I should go," she said, but it came out like a question. "You should," he agreed, but his thumb was tracing her bottom lip now, and she was drowning in the dark heat of his gaze. They stood frozen like that, caught in the space between restraint and surrender. Nal's hands had somehow found their way to his chest, and she could feel his heart hammering beneath her palms. "Michael," she breathed, and it was either a prayer or a warning. She wasn't sure which. The door to the balcony slid open, and they sprang apart like teenagers caught making out. Sybil stood in the doorway, her eyes dancing with knowing amusement. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "But Mum, it's getting late. Want me to call you a taxi?" "I can drive her," Michael offered quickly. "I can take a taxi," Nally said at the same time. Sybil's grin widened. "Michael can drive you, Mama, it's no trouble." The drive back to Nadell's apartment was quiet, the air thick with everything unsaid. When Michael pulled up outside her building, neither of them moved immediately. "Thank you," Nally said finally. "For dinner, for everything." Nality, he turned to face her, and in the dim interior of the car, his expression was intense. "I need to tell you something." Her stomach dropped. "Okay, I should have left Seoul 2 weeks ago. I've been making excuses to my business partners, delaying meetings, pushing back deals, all because he ran a hand through his white hair. Frustrated because I can't bring myself to leave, because every morning I wake up and the only thing I want to do is see you, run with you, hear your voice, and I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other, but I can't stop thinking about you." Nal's heart was in her throat. "Michael, I'm not asking you for anything," he continued, words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back for too long. "I just needed you to know. I needed you to know that this, whatever this is, it's not nothing to me. You're not nothing to me." She sat there, stunned, her mind racing. Every logical part of her screamed that this was too much, too fast, too dangerous. But her heart, her stupid, traitorous heart was singing. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything." He reached over and took her hand, threading their fingers together. "Just think about it. Think about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, we could be something real." She looked down at their joined hands, at the way her brown skin contrasted against his, at the rightness of it. Then she looked up at him, at this beautiful, complicated man who'd crashed into her carefully controlled life and turned everything sideways. "I'll think about it," she said. That night, after he'd walked her to her door and driven away, Nality called Sip. "He told me he can't stop thinking about me," she said without preamble. "He stayed in Seoul for 2 extra weeks because of me." "Oh, Mama." Sybil's voice was warm with affection. "And how do you feel about that?" Terrified, exhilarated, guilty, she sank onto her couch, pressing her hand to her racing heart. "I feel like I'm betraying your father just by entertaining the idea of being with someone else." "Do you remember what Dad used to say about love?" Sybil asked gently. Nality closed her eyes, and her husband's voice echoed in her memory. "Love doesn't subtract, it multiplies." Exactly. Loving someone new doesn't mean you love Dad less. It doesn't erase what you had. It just means your heart is big enough for both. Sybil paused. "He'd want you to be happy, Mama. He loved you enough to want you to keep living, keep loving, even after he was gone." Tears slid down Nal's cheeks. "I'm so scared." "I know, but Michael seems like a good man. And more importantly, you light up when you talk about him. You sound alive again. Really alive. When's the last time you felt that way?" The answer was obvious. Not since before her husband got sick. Not since before grief had hollowed her out and reshaped her into someone harder, more careful, more afraid. "You only get one life," Mama Sybil continued softly, "and it's too short to spend it protecting yourself from feeling things. Dad wouldn't want that for you. I don't want that for you. So if this Michael makes you feel alive again, If he makes you happy, then don't you dare let fear stop you from exploring that. After they hung up, Nality sat in the dark and let herself imagine it. A life where she opened her heart again, where she took the risk, made the leap, allowed herself to fall. It was terrifying, but God, it was also exhilarating. Michael showed up at her door on a Thursday evening without warning. Nally had just gotten out of the shower, her hair still damp and loose around her shoulders, wearing soft loungewear that was decidedly not meant for company. When she opened the door and found him standing there, looking simultaneously determined and vulnerable, her breath caught. "Michael, what are you—" "I can't do this anymore," he said, and pushed past her into the apartment. She closed the door, heart hammering. "Can't do what?" He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes made her stomach flip. "This pretending I'm okay with just being your running partner, your friend. I can't keep showing up every morning and acting like my entire world doesn't shift when you smile at me. Michael, no, let me finish, please." He ran both hands through his hair. A gesture she'd learned meant he was stressed. The white strands fell back messily across his forehead, and she had to resist the urge to reach up and fix them. "I've been in Seoul for a month now. A month. I've missed 3 major board meetings, postponed a merger worth hundreds of millions, and basically put my entire business on hold. And you know what? I don't care. I don't care about any of it because the only thing I can think about is you." Nal's mouth had gone dry. Her hands trembled slightly, so she crossed her arms to hide it. "You don't mean that." "I absolutely mean it." He stepped closer, and she could see the tension thrumming through his body in the set of his shoulders, the clench of his jaw, the way his hands flexed at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. "Do you know what it's like spending every morning with you, watching the sunrise paint your face in gold, listening to you laugh, learning everything about you and then having to pretend I don't want more? It's torture." Nality. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process this avalanche of emotion crashing over her. Her back hit the wall behind her, and she realized she'd been backing away from the intensity radiating off him. "I know I wasn't your first love," Michael continued, his voice dropping lower, more intense. He closed the distance between them again, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with rain. It must have started drizzling outside. "I know there's a part of your heart that will always belong to him, and I respect that. I would never ask you to forget him, or pretend he didn't exist. But now—" He paused, and she watched his throat work as he swallowed hard. The dragon tattoo on his neck shifted with the movement, and her eyes traced its path before meeting his gaze again. "Let me be your last love," he said, and his voice cracked slightly on the words. "Let me be the one who gets to spend the rest of your mornings with you. The one who learns all your secrets and earns your trust and makes you laugh so hard you forget to be scared. Let me be the one who holds you when you're grieving and celebrates with you when you're happy. Let me prove to you that your heart is big enough for both your past and your future." Her eyes were burning with unshed tears. One escaped, sliding down her cheek, and she saw his hand twitch like he wanted to wipe it away, but was forcing himself to wait for her permission. "You don't understand what you're asking," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Then explain it to me." "I'm broken, Michael." The words came out harsh, desperate, torn from somewhere deep inside her. "I'm 41 years old with a dead husband and more baggage than anyone should have to carry. I wake up some mornings and I still reach for him. I see something beautiful and my first instinct is to tell him about it. And then I remember he's gone and it's like losing him all over again. I'm scared all the time, scared of forgetting him, scared of being hurt, scared of letting someone in and having them leave." She was crying freely now, years of carefully controlled grief spilling out. "You deserve someone whole, someone who can give you everything without reservations, someone who doesn't come with ghosts and grief and a heart that's been shattered and glued back together so many times it doesn't fit right anymore. You deserve—" "I don't want someone whole," he interrupted fiercely, and this time he did reach for her. His hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears with a tenderness that made her chest ache. "I want you, all of you, The broken parts, the scared parts, the parts that still grieve and always will. I want lazy Sunday mornings and terrible coffee and fighting about what to watch on TV. I want to hear about your day and learn what makes you laugh, and memorize the way you look when you're thinking too hard about something. His forehead dropped to rest against hers, and she felt his breath ghost across her lips. I want to be there on the mornings when you wake up reaching for him. I want to hold you while you cry, and listen to you tell stories about him, and help you keep his memory alive, because he was part of making you who you are, and I love who you are. Michael. Her hands had somehow found their way to his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. I'm not saying it'll be easy, he continued, his voice softer now, but no less intense. I'm not saying I won't mess up or that there won't be hard days. God knows I've got my own damage. My ex-wife's betrayal left scars that haven't fully healed. Some days I still struggle to trust, still catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I'm saying I want to try. I want to be the person you call when something good happens and when something terrible happens. I want to earn the right to hold you when you cry and celebrate with you when you're happy. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, and the vulnerability she saw there nearly undid her. This powerful, successful man was standing in her apartment, laying his heart bare, asking for nothing except a chance. I want. His voice cracked again, and he had to pause to compose himself. I want a chance, now, just a chance to show you that love doesn't have to end in loss. That opening your heart again doesn't mean betraying the past. That you can honor what you had while still building something new. A tear slid down her cheek, then another. Michael reached up slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and wiped them away with his thumbs. His hands cradled her face like she was something precious, something worth protecting, like she was worth all of this raw, vulnerable honesty. I'm so scared, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I know. His forehead dropped to rest against hers again, and she felt his breath ghost across her lips. She could feel the slight tremor in his hands where they held her face, revealing that he wasn't as composed as he was trying to appear. I'm scared too, terrified actually, because this, what I feel for you, it's bigger than anything I've felt in years, maybe ever, and the thought of you saying no, of walking away from this, it terrifies me. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear and hope. Nality could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, could feel the warmth of Michael's body so close to hers, could see the way his dark eyes held hers with such intensity. It felt like he could see straight into her soul. I need time, she finally said, even though every cell in her body was screaming at her to just give in. To lean forward those few inches and kiss him, to let herself fall completely. This is it's too big, too important. I can't just take all the time you need. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes fully, his hands still framing her face. I'll wait, a week, a month, a year. I'll wait, because you're worth waiting for. Now, Kimalo, you're worth everything. Then he kissed her forehead, soft, reverent, devastating. And she felt that kiss all the way down to her toes. It was a promise and a plea and a goodbye, all wrapped into one gentle press of lips against skin. He let his hands drop slowly, reluctantly, and stepped back. The loss of his touch felt like a physical ache. I'm staying at the Grand Hyatt, he said quietly. Room 1847. When you're ready, if you're ready, you know where to find me. Then he left, and Nellie stood in her doorway for a long time after he was gone, her fingers pressed to where his lips had been, her heart a riot of fear and hope and longing. The next 3 days were torture. Nality went through the motions of her life, teaching her online English courses, video chatting with old friends from Cape Town, running alone in the mornings because seeing Michael felt impossible right now. But her mind wouldn't shut up. She thought about her husband constantly, about the life they'd built together, the love that had sustained her through everything, about the promise she'd made to herself after he died, to never forget him, to honor his memory, to keep his ghost close. But she also thought about what Sybil had said, about her father wanting her to live, about love multiplying instead of subtracting. She pulled out old photo albums, ran her fingers over pictures of her wedding day, her husband's smile, young and bright and full of promise, their first home, tiny and imperfect, but there's Sybil as a baby, then a toddler, then a teenager, with both her parents flanking her at every milestone. "What do I do?" she asked the photos, tracing her late husband's face with a trembling finger. "Tell me what to do." But the photos stayed silent, and Nality was left with her own heart to guide her. On the fourth day, she called Sybil. "He told me he wants to be my last love," Nality said without preamble, her voice thick with emotion. "He said he'd wait for me however long I needed." "Oh, Mama." Silly's voice was tender, full of understanding. "What did you say?" "That I needed time." She paused, staring out her apartment window at the Seoul skyline. "But baby, I don't think I do need time. I mean, I think I'm just scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that if I say yes, if I let him in completely, I'll forget your father. That I'll lose the pieces of him I've been holding on to so tightly." Her voice broke. "That loving someone new means the love I had before wasn't enough." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, "Mama, do you remember Dad's last good day before he got too sick?" Nality closed her eyes, and the memory washed over her with startling clarity. "We went to the beach, just the three of us. He was weak but determined. We sat and watched the sunset, and the sky was all these shades of orange and pink and purple. You built sandcastles. He held my hand. Do you remember what he said to you?" Cybernile's voice was gentle, guiding her through the memory. "He said," her voice broke and she had to pause to collect herself. "He said he'd had a beautiful life with me, that loving me and raising you were the best things he'd ever done. And then he said he wanted you to keep finding beautiful things." Sibjul finished softly. "Even after he was gone, he said you had too much love in your heart to lock it away forever, that it would be a waste of all that love, all that capacity for joy to let it die with him." Nality was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I remember I told him I couldn't imagine loving anyone else. And he said, loving someone new wouldn't mean you loved him less, that the heart doesn't subtract, it multiplies." Sybil's own voice was thick with tears now. "He made you promise, Mama. Do you remember? He made you promise that if you ever found someone who made you happy, someone who treated you right, you wouldn't let fear stop you." "I remember," Nality whispered. "Then honor that, Mama. Honor him by living, by opening your heart to this man who clearly adores you. Dad's memory doesn't live in your loneliness. It lives in your capacity to love, in the way you raised me, in every kind thing you do, in the joy you find in small moments. You could love 1,000 people and it wouldn't diminish what you had with him. If anything, it would honor it because he loved you enough to want you to keep loving, keep living, keep finding beauty in the world." "When did you get so wise?" Nality asked through her tears. "I learned from the best." Sybil's smile was audible through the phone. "So, what are you going to do?" Nality wiped her eyes and looked around her apartment at the life she'd built, safe and small and manageable, at the photos of her husband that she'd kept on every surface, like surrounding herself with his image could keep him from truly being gone, at the careful, controlled existence she'd crafted out of grief and duty and fear. Then she looked at her phone, at Michael's contact, still sitting there waiting at the possibility of something new and terrifying and beautiful. "I'm going to choose happiness," she said, and felt the truth of it settled into her bones. "I'm going to choose to live." She called Michael immediately after hanging up with her daughter. He answered on the first ring, and she could hear the barely controlled hope in his voice. "Nality, where are you?" Her heart was pounding, her hands shaking, but she felt more certain than she had in years. More alive. "Home, why? What, stay there? I'm coming to you." The drive to his hotel felt eternal and too short all at once. Her mind raced with everything she wanted to say, every fear she needed to voice, every hope she was finally allowing herself to feel when she finally reached his door and knocked. Her hands were trembling so badly she had to press them against her thighs. He opened the door in casual clothes, sweatpants and a t-shirt that stretched across his broad chest. and his eyes went wide with surprise and barely contained hope. "Nality, I want you," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush before she could second guess herself. "I want this. I want us. I'm terrified and I might mess this up. And some days I'm going to be sad about my husband, and I'll need you to understand that. Some mornings I'll wake up and forget he's gone, and the grief will hit me all over again. And I'll need you to hold me while I cry. Some days I might pull away because getting close still feels dangerous. But I want to try. I want morning runs and terrible coffee and fighting about what to watch on TV. I want all of it with you." The smile that broke across Michael's face was like the sun coming out after weeks of rain. Yeah, she laughed, giddy with relief and fear and exhilaration. "I want." She didn't get to finish because Michael pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It wasn't soft or tentative. It was hungry and desperate and full of 3 weeks of pent-up longing and 4 days of agonizing uncertainty. His hands tangled in her hair, and she gripped his shirt like she was drowning and he was air. She could taste salt from her tears or his. She wasn't sure and feel the thundering of his heart against her chest when they finally broke apart, both gasping for breath. His eyes were blazing with an intensity that should have scared her but instead made her feel safe. "Seen chosen. I'm going to make you so happy," he promised, his forehead pressed to hers, his voice rough with emotion. "You already do," she replied and kissed him again. The next 2 weeks were a blur of discovery. Michael and Nality fell into each other's lives with startling ease. They still ran together every morning, but now those runs ended with breathless kisses against park benches and stolen moments where Michael would pull her close just to feel her heartbeat against his. They spent afternoons exploring Seoul together, the neighborhoods Nality had lived in for 2 years but never really seen. Michael showed her hidden cafes and street food vendors, galleries tucked into alleyways and bookshops that stayed open until midnight. In turn, she showed him her favorite spots: the library where she'd spent countless lonely afternoons, the park bench where she'd cried after particularly hard days, the bridge where she'd finally decided to stay in Seoul instead of running back to Cape Town. "I'm glad you stayed," Michael murmured one evening, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the sun set over the Han River. "So am I," Nality replied, and meant it with her whole heart. They had dinner with Sybil and Ginho twice a week, and watching Michael interact with her daughter filled Nality with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. He asked Cybernial about her work as a translator, laughed at her terrible jokes, and treated her with the respect and affection of someone who understood how precious she was. One night, after Cybernial and Ginho had gone to bed, Nality and Michael found themselves on the balcony again. This time, there was no hesitation when Michael pulled her into his arms. "Your daughter approves," he said, kissing the top of her head. "She really does." Nality traced the dragon tattoo on his neck, something she'd become addicted to doing. "Thank you for that, for treating her so well. She's part of you." "Of course, I treat her well." He tilted her chin up. "Besides, I need her on my side for what I'm about to ask you." Her stomach flipped. "What are you about to ask me?" Michael took a deep breath, and she realized he was nervous. "My business partners have been patient, but I can't stay in Seoul forever. I need to go back to California." Her heart sank. She'd known this was coming, had been dreading it, actually, but hearing him say it made it real. When, end of the week, he kept her face in his hands. "But Nality, I don't want to go without you." She blinked. "What?" "Come with me to California." "Not forever. Not if you don't want to, but just try it. See if we can make this work across the ocean instead of just across the city." His thumbs stroked her cheeks. "I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But I can't stand the thought of being on the other side of the world from you when we're just figuring this out. Michael, I can't just leave. I have my online teaching and Sibjul is here." "Your teaching is online. You can do that from anywhere." He was talking faster now, excited. "And Sybil is a grown woman with her own life. I'm not asking you to abandon her. I'm asking you to build something new while still keeping what you have. Video calls, visits back and forth. We'll make it work." You're asking me to uproot my entire life for a relationship that's barely a month old. I'm asking you to take a chance on us." His eyes held hers, intense and pleading. "I'm asking you to trust that what we have is worth the risk. And I promise you, Nality, I promise you, I will spend every single day proving that I'm worth it." She should say no. It was too much, too fast, too reckless. But when she opened her mouth, different words came out. "I need to talk to Sib." Hope flared in his eyes. "Of course, take all the time you need." The next morning, Nally went to her daughter's house alone. Sibjul took one look at her face and put on the kettle. "He asked you to go with him, didn't he?" Sybil said, pouring them both tea. "How did you, Mom? I've seen the way he looks at you, like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life." She sat across from her mother and took her hands. "Are you going to go?" "I don't know." Nality stared into her tea. "What about you? I came here to be close to you, and now I'm considering leaving again. What kind of mother does that make me?" "The kind who deserves happiness," Sybil said firmly. "Mama, I love having you close, but I don't need you to sacrifice your life for me. I'm married, I'm settled, I'm building my own family, and honestly, it would make me so happy to see you building something new, too. But what if it doesn't work? What if I go all the way to California and it falls apart and I've given up everything for nothing? Then you come back." Sybil squeezed her hands. "You come back and we figure it out together like we always do." "But Mama, what if it does work? What if you go to California and find out that Michael Kim is the missing piece you didn't even know you were looking for?" Nal's eyes filled with tears. "When did you get so grown up?" "July 15th, 19 years ago." Sybil smiled. "The day you became a single mum and decided you were going to raise me right no matter what. You taught me to be brave, Mama. Now it's time for you to be brave, too." They cried together, holding each other across the table, and when Nality finally pulled back, she knew what her answer would be. She called Michael that afternoon. "I'll come with you," she said, without preamble. The sound he made was pure relief. Yeah, but Michael, I need you to understand something. Anything. I'm going to need time to adjust. I'm going to have hard days where I miss my daughter and my life here. I'm probably going to second-guess this decision more times than you can count. And some days I'm still going to grieve my husband, and you're going to have to be okay with that." "I can do that," he said immediately. "I can do all of that. As long as you're with me, we can handle anything." "Okay." She took a shaky breath. "Okay, let's do this." The week that followed was chaos. Packing, arranging for her apartment to be split, endless tearful conversations with Sybil about video call schedules and visit plans. But through it all, Michael was there helping her pack, holding her when she cried, promising over and over that they'd make this work. The night before their flight, Nalad and Michael had dinner with Sybil and Ginho one last time. Sybil cried through the entire meal, and Nal wasn't far behind. "I'm so proud of you, Mama," Sile whispered when they hugged goodbye. "Dad would be proud too." "I love you so much," Nalady said, holding her daughter tight. "So much, baby girl. I love you, too. Now go live your life and call me the second you land." That night, lying in Michael's arms in his hotel room, Nally felt peace settle over her like a blanket. This was right. Terrifying, yes. Uncertain, absolutely. But right. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Michael's fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. "For being patient, for seeing me, for making me want to take this risk." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Thank you for trusting me, for choosing this, for letting me be your missing piece." The airport was overwhelming. Too many people, too much noise, too many emotions swirling in Nal's chest. She held tight to Michael's hand as they checked in, as they went through security, as they waited at the gate. "Last chance to back out," Michael said, but he was smiling. He knew she wouldn't. "Not a chance," Nally replied and kissed him. The flight was long, but Nally didn't mind. She dozed against Michael's shoulder, his arm wrapped securely around her. When she awoke, he was watching her with such tenderness that her breath caught. "What?" she asked sleepily. Just memorizing this, he said. You here with me, the beginning of everything. You're such a romantic, she teased. But her heart was full. Only for you. When they landed in California, the sun was setting in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Michael drove them to his home, a beautiful house overlooking the ocean. All glass and clean lines and spaces that felt like they were waiting to be filled with life. What do you think? He asked nervously as they stood on the deck, watching waves crash against the shore. I think it's perfect, Naled said honestly. I think we're going to be happy here. He pulled her into his arms and they stood there as the sun sank into the Pacific. Two people who'd found each other in the least likely of places and decided to take a chance on forever. I love you, Michael said, and it was the first time he'd said it out loud. Nal's heart swelled. I love you, too. They kissed as the last light faded from the sky, and Nally felt something in her chest expand. Hope, joy, the thrilling, terrifying certainty that this was just the beginning. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sybil. Did you land safely? Call me soon. Love you, Mama. Dad would be so happy for you. Nality smiled through tears and tucked her phone away. Then she took Michael's hand and led him inside, ready to start building this new life together. Behind them, the ocean roared its approval, and above them, the stars came out to shine. Soul lovers, if you made it this far, you just experienced something special. You felt Nal's journey from grief to hope, from fear to love, from surviving to truly living. And isn't that what we all want? To find someone who sees us, really sees us, and chooses us. Anyway, if you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on those notifications so you're first in line when I drop more stories that'll make you feel all the things. And to my returning viewers, you're the real MVPs. Thank you for being here, for letting these stories into your hearts. Drop a comment below. What country are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? I love seeing our global family come together over these stories. Until next time, remember, your heart is allowed to heal. You're allowed to love again. You're allowed to take the leap. See you in the next.